right, welcome everyone to the Winning Play Podcast. It is Waiver Tuesday. It's one of the most important days of the fantasy week every week. So we want to take a little bit of time, dive into the weeds, and figure out for you, what are your best options to try to improve your team after what was a pretty crazy week in the NFL, especially with injuries. Drew, why don't you kick us off? What are a couple of names that you're targeting on this Waiver Tuesday?
Well, the first guy I want to talk about, I talked about him after week one and said he had the looks. He had a big touchdown week one, but he was going to get more targets, was Alec Pierce. Came out in week two, got 7 targets, 5 catches for 56 yards and a touch. He's clearly, it looks like, Anthony Richardson's favorite target at the moment. I do think Pittman and Adonai Mitchell are going to get theirs and they're going to come up. But if you're looking for a wide receiver on the waiver wire, he'd be my number one take right now, would be Alec Pierce. Second, looking at Braylon Allen on the Jets. They're going to run the ball. Aaron Rodgers still, I don't think, has cracked 200 yards passing in either week. This week, Braylon Allen got 7 carries, 33 yards, a touchdown, and 2 catches for 25 yards and another touchdown. I don't think that's going to happen every week, but this guy is going to get play. I don't think it's going to be 100% Breece Hall. I don't think he's going away. And never again to wish for injury. If Breece Hall goes down, I think you've got a serious running back in Braylon Allen there in New York. And then last off, let's talk about the Chiefs running back situation. Unfortunately, Isaiah Pacheco on the IR, could miss an extended period of time. And I know a lot of Pacheco owners like me are wondering which of these guys do you pick up. I would say my take Carson Steele. Anthony Reid has said he's going to come into that role. We saw at the end of this week, it was all Carson Steele. He looked pretty decent. I would expect him for the time being to be the guy that you could start. We will see if Samaje Perine starts to vulture some of that. I wouldn't be spending too much fab budget on Samaje Perine. Then you've also got the news breaking today that Kareem Hunt has been added by the Chiefs. He's definitely worth an add. I don't think you can start him in the next couple of weeks until you see him get going. But wherever he's ended up, he's found a way to produce, including in his previous stint with the Chiefs. So I definitely think he's worth a waiver add. And then fourth, a guy that nobody's really talking about who's out there for free in most leagues is Clyde Lair. And when he's obviously a stash for a couple weeks from now, but if you have the IR spot and flexibility, you could grab him, stash him in the IR spot. I think there's a pretty decent chance that he makes it back before Pacheco and that then he is the number one guy in a top scoring offense. So you can kind of take a stab at anybody. My answer for the Chiefs backfield would be Carson Steele for this week, CEH for the season long, and if you're going for a flyer, go ahead and grab Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, Samaje Perine, when they signed him for the season, and Rob, I know you had talked about it, especially knowing his pass game prowess, it was the thought that he might really limit Pacheco, and it didn't really come to fruition early on. And now with Pacheco down, he's probably the 4th most important ad, I think, of the 4 guys, if you're looking at them. But I'm with you. When he talked about Carson Steele being the guy, that was before they signed Kareem Hunt. And now they have signed Kareem Hunt. He knows Andy Reid's offense. He's played there before. So the upside of Hunt is certainly greater, but he is coming off the street. So, to be honest, I'm probably just going to let everyone spend their fab, and I'm just going to save it and spend elsewhere, I think.
What about your picks? Who are you taking then on waivers?
Well, there is a running back out there that I do really like. I shouldn't, relatively speaking, but it was a really, really interesting way it played out, and that's Deonta Foreman with the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland moved the football well, particularly on the ground. Jerome Ford was supposed to be the guy with Nick Chubb gone, and yet, for whatever reason, Foreman outsnapped him, outcarried him. He had less yards, but the usage was there, and Foreman was also the only back to have any red zone carries for Cleveland in that game. And that's really, really strange because Ford had 7 carries for 64 yards. He was running the ball really, really well and efficiently, like he has going all the way back to last year. And yet, for some reason, Foreman, the coaching staff, must really like something that he's doing. And this wouldn't be the first time we've seen Foreman surprise and take someone's job. He's done it a couple different places. And I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes more of an even split and he's getting the red zone carries. And if that happens, he's worth a speculative ad. Another guy that I think is well worth targeting at the tight end position this time is Hunter Henry. I know week one he had a really quiet first week, but we've seen Jacoby Brissett target tight ends consistently throughout his career. Hunter Henry's coming off a career day at like 105 yards this past week. This week upcoming against the Jets in what should be, you're not going to be able to throw the ball outside the numbers very much against that Jets secondary. So I think Henry's going to get peppered again this week. And knowing the tight end landscape and how awful it's been for almost everyone that drafted a tight end outside of maybe a 2 or 3 guys, you're looking for some production. And I think Henry, at least for in the short term, will provide that. And finally, another guy to keep an eye on is Jalen Nailor in Minnesota. You know, with Justin Jefferson's injury, even though they say it's minor, I'm guessing he's not 100% this weekend. And we still don't know what we're getting with Jordan Addison. So Nailor, coming off a solid game, had 50-plus yards. He scored again this past week. He very well might get a decent target share again on a Sam Darnold offense that suddenly looks really good. So he's another one that if you need some help at receiver, he's borderline free. You could probably grab him tonight in waivers, and it won't cost you very much. How about you, Rob? Where are you going?
So I love all these guys you guys have talked about just in terms of this week and waiver wire. Hunter Henry would probably be my number 2 behind this guy I want to talk about, Quentin Johnston. So just to give a brief overview of the waiver wire so far, this year I wouldn't say there's a Puka or a Kyron out there, so none of these guys in either weeks would I dump full fab on any of these guys. So just keep in mind, relatively speaking, when we bring up these guys, these are just the best available. But I actually really like the season-long proposition for Quentin Johnston on the Chargers, and he's had a disappointing start to his career. He was probably overdrafted. But when I look at this Chargers team and I look at his usage, right now it's pretty clear that Greg Roman saw what Rashee Rice was doing on the Chiefs, and they've been running him across the field on crossers and using his big body and yards after catch ability and limiting maybe his current limitations on route running. I look at this receiving core, and I don't really see a dead set alpha wide receiver on this team. Now, Ladd McConkey was the high draft pick, and I think by season's end he's going to have a significant role. But when I see a true alpha, physically dominating receiver, the only guy I can really see on that team doing it is Quentin Johnston. So if they start peppering him with these short to intermediate targets and letting him use his physical ability to run after the catch, I do like a growing share of the passing offense on a team. Now, keep in mind, this is a run-heavy team, but they still are going to have to pass with Justin Herbert at the helm. So I like his possibility. Now, this doesn't mean dump full fab, but he is my number 1 waiver wire of the week, followed by Hunter Henry and Alec Pierce.
It's a good chance, though. You might, well, even if you do grab him, because I'm with you that of those 3 guys, he has the highest likelihood to have season-long value. He was a first-round pick. He was a beast at TCU.
Sure.
But this particular week, even if you land him, don't be surprised if he puts up a goose egg against Pittsburgh.
Sure, yeah, Pittsburgh's an incredible defense. Them in Chicago, I think we're going to be looking back at these defenses season long and realizing how good they are against matchups and things like that. But if I'm going to go to followed up, you guys talked about some of the top waiver wires. I'm going to follow up with some uglies. I'll call them. Mixon got banged up a little bit, so we don't know if he's going to come back this week. And behind him, Cam Akers got all the work when Mixon went out. So Dare Ngumbawale is on the team, and he is traditionally their third down back, pass catching back before they had Mixon, and he'll get the work. Cam Akers won't get it all, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably go Cam Akers first, then Dare. Cam looked pretty solid, and he busted through some holes and ran through. So on an offense that will still score points, he's not a bad pickup. And then we got to talk about, the unfortunate ugly of the ugly, the Rams wide receivers. Puka went down for who knows how long. Cooper Kupp is a candidate for the IR, and now we're looking at Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Whittington, and Tutu Atwell. And I think I talked to you guys, off screen where these guys like Sean McVay and Mike on the Dolphins and Shanahan of the 49ers, they are coaches that love to flex their schemes a little bit and love to show that they can scheme any given guy open for a game and give him production. So I think this is going to be a really hard wide receiver core to pick. Now, Demarcus Robinson is probably the easy choice for the top pickup, but I was telling you guys off screen, I could totally see a week where Sean McVay wants to get Whittington the ball. He was a preseason standout, and he's got some pretty juicy potential, especially in this offense. So we'll see how it goes. But it's hard to want to pick any of those guys. But injuries have been abound lately, so we are talking about waiver wires and needs.
Well, and at the end of the day, in fantasy football, as you know, you don't win a title by drafting really well. You also need to be really solid in in-season management. And most of that is entailed on Waiver Tuesdays. So every week, you guys should always feel free to come here because we're going to give you all the names and the details on where you want to look to, how much fab you really want to spend to help you improve your team so you can actually put yourself in position at the end of the season to go win a title. So for Drew and Rob, I'm Kendall. We'll see you guys next week.